So why do we need to eat before working out? Before we go any further, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell down here in the corner. That way you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. We got training vlogs coming out every Tuesday. We got our blog on the website on Thursday. I'll put a link to that in the description below as well. And then every Friday, we have our training talks coming out, normally about lunchtime. So with the exception of a handful of very unique training circumstances, we probably want to eat something before we get out the door to go get our workout in. But if we're trying to do a workout, where we're trying to work hard or for a long time, we need to eat before we go. I talked about this a little bit in the blog post yesterday. I'll put a link to that down below. But today I kind of wanted to get into the weeds a little bit, into the hows and the whys of the physiology of the metabolism behind it. Quite frankly, metabolic physiology is, in concept, pretty simple, but if you're trying to really get into the weeds, the nitty-gritty of every single reaction, it's really super complex, and I'm not going to get that into it, mostly because I don't have a whiteboard big enough to diagram the whole thing out for you. The reason why you need to eat before doing a hard workout is the same as why people hit the wall when they're running a marathon. So when you hit the wall, fundamentally what happens is you run out of glycogen. Like, we all know that, right? That's why we drink sports drinks and take on goop packets or shot blocks or gummy bears or whatever our refined carbohydrate of choice in the middle of a hard, long, fast run is, right? Running out of sugar makes it so our brain doesn't work well. And that's the part of hitting the wall that is really hard. And like, that's the part that really sucks about it, right? Is our brain's not functioning anymore. So we're not thinking positively, or normally it's not uncommon folks get caught in kind of that negative thought process spiral. Our sense of time goes out the window, which is why that last couple of miles is the longest couple of miles you will ever run. I don't care who you are, or how fast you're moving. If your brain is in that spot where it doesn't have the glycogen it needs to run, it's going to be a miserable experience, right? Our sense of time goes out the window. But the other side of that is, once we run out of glycogen, we run out of sugar, we no longer have the fast-burning fuel that we require to kind of prime the pump, so to speak, of the metabolic chain that allows us to break down fat and turn it into energy, right? And so there's part of the reason we spend so much time doing lactate threshold training is it allows us to push at higher intensity, go faster while using fat as that primary fuel source, so we don't run out of glycogen, right? And if we are using glycogen to jumpstart that chain, this is part of the reason why a lot of folks try to carbo load, trick our bodies into soaking up extra glycogen before a long race or a hard race. But that sugar is needed to kind of jumpstart that whole process. Because I don't care who you are, you have enough body fat to provide enough energy to go run 26.2 miles, right? Like, we're not energy limited. We're really good at using fat as a fuel. It's a really efficient metabolic pathway. We get a lot of energy out of it. Unfortunately, if we're running faster, we're burning through that glycogen to not only get the fat started, but if we're running too fast, we're burning that glucose, that glycogen, the sugar. We're burning the sugar on its own on top of using it to prime the pump for burning fat. And so it makes it so we run out of that sugar faster, right? In an ideal world, we run out right when we cross the finish line. But if we're just over that red line, we're going to run out of sugar before we get there. Why is it important to eat before we go work out, right? Because this is what we're trying to tie it all back into. The reason why is because if we're trying to do a hard run, which requires the higher gears, or we're trying to do a long run where we're going to be stressing our body's ability to keep producing fuel, using fat as that primary fuel, we need to make sure we eat ahead of time so that we have some blood sugar floating around. We don't have to completely gnaw away and eat all of our glycogen reserves. One of the reasons why this is one, we can only liberate those glycogen reserves and break it down into glucose so we can get the whole chain going at a certain speed, right? And so the amount of output we're able to generate in terms of physics is limited by how fast we can produce ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, which is the end result of all of these metabolic pathways, right? And so if we have to first break down the glycogen, we have to first break down the fat to do that. Now, obviously, we're limited by our ability to do that, right? We're limited by how much of that we can process at once. It's really hard to speed up a chemical reaction. Normally, in order to do that, you have to add an enzyme or you have to add heat. Obviously, we don't want to increase our body temperature too much. Otherwise, we're going to have a heat stroke, right? We're really good at maintaining that 98.6 degrees just about no matter what. And the other part of that is adding an enzyme. We have all the enzymes we need. Part of what we're trying to do in this training is make it so we build more of those enzymes within the muscle cells. So if we're working really hard and we're trying to find those top-end gears, we can't provide enough energy using just the fat as a fuel. We can't burn the fat fast enough to produce enough ATP to generate that amount of force in terms of physics. All right. And so what that results in is, in order to make up the difference, we got to burn the glucose. We got to burn the sugar, right? But because the glycogen, the stored form of glucose in our muscles, we got to break that down first. We can only break it down so fast. In order to really find those top-end gears, we have to have some form of sugar available. And so we have to eat something before we get going, right? One, this gives us the sugar we're putting in to burn, right? But also it gives us an insulin drop and lets our body go, okay, we're not going to be starved to death. We can let some of this glycogen go. We can break it down and use it as fuel, and we'll just refuel when we're done. We'll top it back off when we're done. That's great. And so by allowing our body to let some of that glycogen go so we can break it down, we actually have more energy we can use to get to those higher gears. And so if we're doing repeats or intervals or working really hard or racing a 5K or a 10K, we need those higher end gears in order to really do that. If you're trying to do 400-meter repeats without any blood sugar, you're not really getting a lot out of it. You're not going to be able to generate enough oomph to stress the central nervous system. You're not going to be able to generate enough oomph to require breaking down, you're not going to be breaking down enough glucose to result in acidosis if you're trying to get better buffering your blood pH, right? So we need to make sure we have the fuel available to be able to hit the gears that we're trying to hit in the workout. And for the long runs, this is kind of the same deal too. One, it makes it a little bit easier for our body to be okay, you can have some of this glycogen for this workout, and then as long as you're going to top it off afterwards, right? Because our body knows we're not limited by food availability. Hooray, evolution. And so if our body knows we're not limited by food availability, it's more likely to let the glycogen go so we can use it to break it down into glucose and start the whole glycolytic chain, which is a prerequisite for breaking down the fat, right? And so what it means is we're going to be able to break down more fat over time, over the course of the long run. And so we'll be able to actually get the workout in. If we're limited by our ability, we get to the point where there's just not sugar available, all of a sudden the amount of energy we can produce using fat as our only fuel source, we're not producing enough energy to be able to keep going. The limiting factor isn't the ability to get oxygen to our muscles and using that oxygen to get the fat broken down and producing ATP. The limiting factor all of a sudden becomes to jumpstart the fat breakdown. So we got to break it down first, right? And if we can't break it down because we don't have the glucose to do it, there's not the fuel, the reagents necessary for the energy chain that's going to result in the energy we need to run, or bike, or swim, or whatever our sport of choice is. So we have to eat before we do a quality workout, with a couple of exceptions. That there is a time and a place for fast and long runs. Most of us don't need to worry about that. Well, that'll be another video. Our primary training objectives as endurance athletes are normally getting better at utilizing fat as a fuel, right? So we can burn more of it at once, so we can move faster without burning excess glycogen just to move. We're using all of the glycogen just to break down fat. Or we're trying to get like more biomechanically efficient, and that way it doesn't require as much energy to move over a given distance, right? That way we can be more efficient with the energy we are producing with the fat metabolism, so that we're not wasting the energy we're getting by breaking down the glucose and the glycogen to get the fat going, because we got to be misers. It's a long way, and you're going to get there faster if you're more efficient, and you're going to be able to actually cover the distance if you're more efficient. So yeah, so you got to eat before you work out. Otherwise, you're not going to get as much out of your workout. And by God, as limited for time as we are and how much time our workouts take, if we're going to do the work, you better get something out of it. So, until next time, train smart.